Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, the show where we break down the intersection of cannabis, culture, and policy with the people on the front line of change. Today, we're looking at Minnesota, one of the newest states to legalize adult use cannabis as of August of 2023. Now, as exciting as this milestone is, legalization doesn't mean that the door swings right open. Minnesota's cannabis market is in a unique position, full of promise but not without its challenges. From complex licensing and processing issues to hurdles of launching a brand new regulatory framework, there's a lot to explore. And to help us dig into this important conversation today is someone who's been on the front lines of cannabis policy in Minnesota for a while now. It's Leili Fatehi. Leili is one of the chief architects behind Minnesota's legalization policy, a partner and a principal at Blunt Strategies, and the owner of Crested River Cannabis Company. Her expertise spans politics, policy, and industry development, and she's here today to help us see if we can unpack Minnesota's cannabis story. Leili, welcome to Let's Be Blunt with Montel.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. Look, let's start from the very beginning. Let's go back a little bit. Tell me about your background and where you're from and where you grew up and how you got into the cannabis consulting industry.
Yeah, I grew up and down the East Coast, but I've lived in Minnesota for about the last 20 years. I came out here for law school and sort of fell in love with the Midwest and Midwestern sensibilities and stayed put. I used to work in academia. I worked on complex policy issues where you have emerging areas of technology. But I got kind of bored being in academia and just publishing academic papers and things like that. And so I started getting a lot more involved in actual political and policy work. And then from there, founded a public affairs practice. And we're a social benefit business. So we focus on things that have major implications, especially in terms of economic and social justice. And so cannabis went kind of part and parcel with that. But I've also been like a cannabis enthusiast for my entire adult life.
Okay. And so that's what got you started. Now, adult use cannabis became legal in Minnesota back in August of 2023, which is fantastic. But legalization is just the first step. Can you kind of tell us where things are right now, where they stand, and how the rollout is going in Minnesota's cannabis market?
Yep. So we are just beginning the process of license, applications and licensing. Our Office of Cannabis
passed the 2023, and we're just now beginning the process.
Yeah, what we did in Minnesota is fundamentally different than what a lot of other states have done. In a lot of other states, when they have legalized, they have had a strong incumbent medical cannabis market that really then becomes the pathway for setting in place the legalization laws, doing the rulemaking, and then those guys get licensed and begin operating. In Minnesota, we actually legalized hemp-derived THC products first. We became the first state to legalize and regulate those products that are now so popular nationwide. And so it really became our local businesses that were the industry incumbents, these local hemp businesses. And so when it came time to develop our legalization law, Minnesota took a fundamentally different approach than any state before us. We decided to prioritize a small business, craft scale industry. And so that has required taking also a fundamentally different approach to what our regulatory framework looks like and what the rules are. And so, we're having a slower rollout than a lot of states where they've been able to just turn the lights on with the same large national companies. But we're hoping to open a much more ethical market that serves as a national standard for all the states to come after us.
Well, let's back up a little bit, because if they approved hemp-based products, were there hemp-based products with THC in them in the marketplace?
Yeah, there were lots of these products on the marketplace, largely being sold either over the internet or found in gas stations. These were products that became legal as a result of the Farm Bill.
So
Um,
you had THC-8 products out on the marketplace, and
Exactly. And so, these products were showing up on the shelves, no labeling requirements, no child proofing, no anything, and no tax being collected on them. And so our legislature legalized these products in order to be able to regulate them. But in doing so, it also created, this enormous industry of now regulated D9 hemp THC products that Minnesota was really at the forefront of, and now we see these beverages, everywhere nationwide.
and mostly in the beverage area, or in smokables and vaporables and other things. What?
It's really the beverage area where we have seen an enormous explosion nationally. For a long time, beverages were considered an extremely niche sort of cannabis product and not one that had particularly good margins. But these lower potency hemp beverages, they're really being sold as alternatives to, for example, drinking alcohol. If you come here in Minnesota, you see these products are available in our liquor stores, in our grocery stores, in health and wellness stores. You can get them in restaurants. They can pour them on tap. The ski chalet has it, the bowling alley has it. And, this is really changing consumer habits, and it's changing, I think, the landscape from a regulatory standpoint and from a product standpoint nationally.
Well, I mean, now and again, the Delta 8 products are really strange products, in the sense that, it's buyer beware, because it's whoever decides that they think they know how to manufacture this product, they produce it with whatever chemical processes that they like.
Mhm.
Have you been having any issues with some of the Delta 8 products?
So the first thing that Minnesota did when legalizing these products was banning the Delta 8s, the Delta 10s, the HHCs. It's in Minnesota, it's um, Delta 9 THC, and it has to be, straight derived. It can't be synthetically, like, lab manufactured. Um, so we did set in place some of the strictest parameters that you see nationwide in terms of what are qualified products. And yep, all of those novel cannabinoids, the risk profiles for which we don't know, that exactly as you said, are manufactured often using solvents and things. And we prohibited those in Minnesota.
Okay. Okay. But now that you have the medical, well, not a medical, now that you have an adult use cannabis program in place, how are your products going to now differ from the ones that were on the shelves beforehand?
Yeah, so we really developed our laws and policies to maintain that hemp-derived market at the same time as we have an adult use market, and to set it up so that there is some parity as well as some unique business opportunities for those who participate in the industry here. The hemp-derived products will continue to be lower potency products, so they can be 5 milligrams a serving. You can have up to 10 milligrams in a beverage package. You can have 10 servings, say, in a package of gummies, but they're all capped at 5 milligrams a serving. Those products will continue to be available on that broader product market, so in the liquor stores, in the grocery stores, etc. Higher potency products that can be derived from marijuana, not from hemp, those will be the products on the regulated adult use market. And then one of the additional sort of trade-offs is when you're operating on the adult use side, You have those higher regulatory burdens, but you have access to a lot more of the, the government grant programs, especially the social equity programs. On the hemp side, you have a lower regulatory burden, but you have the benefit of being able to sell on an open market.
Gotcha. And now, how do you say Minnesotans? I guess is how you would say it. How have they, gravitated towards the marketplace?
Minnesotans are absolutely embracing the marketplace. I mean, Minnesota has one of the oldest traditions of grassroots advocacy for legalization nationwide. And so, if Minnesota, like most other states that have legalized, if we had ballot initiatives, we would have legalized a long time ago. Because majority of Minnesotans have supported legalization, but we didn't have that mechanism and we had a divided government. So that's why we had to take this method. But, especially since we started with these lower potency hemp-derived products, and a lot of consumers were able to, their first interaction with THC was in the context of, say, a liquor store or their local brewery. We've seen entire consumer populations here in Minnesota you would not think of as being your traditional cannabis consumer, that are cannabis consumers. And we anticipate that a lot of them will carry over to being adult use cannabis consumers because, the products it's just so much more destigmatized here. And then it's also, really reflected in this decision to prioritize a local craft-based economy, I think also factors into that.
So explain a little bit, because the people are not that familiar with the licensing structure in Minnesota, how it works. Who gets to qualify for these licenses, and how does the process work?
So, there's an application process, right? So the legislature has set up certain criteria by which some business owners can qualify as social equity applicants. That's on the basis of census tract where you live, the goal being to prioritize folks that are from communities that were disproportionately impacted by prohibition and over policing. It includes, veterans. It includes people who were previously had cannabis charges, or who are the parent or the children of people with cannabis charges. You can get social equity verified. And then there's an application process depending on what type of cannabis business it is that you want to apply for. If you want to apply to have a hemp-derived business, that's a much, much lower regulatory burden. It's more of a registration and then compliance with a certain set of requirements. If you want to be on the adult use side, it is, a rigorous regulatory process that involves, providing information about your corporate structure and your business plan and your operating practices.
And like your hemp derived products, hemp derived products, can they get some of their component or constituent parts across state lines?
Yes, the hemp-derived products are federally legal under the Farm Bill, so you can get them over state lines. Now, different states have different rules as to which products they allow, but as a matter of interstate commerce, yep, those products are federally
So
legal.
you could literally get hemp derived Delta 9 distillate, and now you're in business.
Absolutely. I mean, this has become an entire additional, segment of the industry, of the cannabis industry. And yeah, I mean, the companies that have these products, they ship nationwide. We ship nationwide.
Got it. So your beverages can be shipped nationwide.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then
Assuming that the state you're shipping them to has, permits those products,
reciprocity. Okay.
which all states, I think, except Utah do. But they have different, allowable potencies and things like that. But yeah.
Okay, and then if you have T8 or you have Delta 9 from cannabis plants, those can't be shipped over state lines. You have to create that
Correct.
under state.
Correct. And the distinction is this distinction that was put in the Farm Bill in 2018 that says that hemp is cannabis with under 0.3% delta 9 THC by dry weight. And so that definitional distinction between hemp and marijuana became the predicate for these products becoming federally legal. It was a loophole.
Okay, and your state does not have a medical program.
Our state does have a medical program.
Okay.
Our state legalized medical cannabis a little over a decade ago, but has had one of the most restrictive medical cannabis programs in the country, with a state mandated duopoly, meaning only two companies were licensed, and they were the only two companies that were allowed to operate, and they were limited in terms of how many retail locations they could have. And we didn't legalize flower until I think 2021 or 2022. So we had one of the most expensive and restrictive programs here in Minnesota.
Wow, and how has now the adult use program impacted the medical program?
Yeah, that's still to be seen. Again, our legislators really were focused on ensuring that with the legalization, with adult use legalization, that we would still have a robust medical cannabis program, because that is very important for those that are, registered patients. And so, the law is built with mechanisms that allow for these two existing medical cannabis companies to have some limited participation in adult use. And then I think, we're likely to see some evolving legislation around what the supply chain looks like between adult use and medical for being able to supply patients.
You have a very interesting Native American cannabis operation going on in communities in Minnesota. Can you shop? Can anyone shop at those kinds of dispensaries on reservations?
Yes, anyone can shop at those dispensaries that are now operational on a number of our tribal reservations
And
here.
are those tribal reservation dispensaries? Are they adult use or are they medical use?
They are adult use.
Okay.
Yes, so those are open for business because the tribal nations, because they are independent nations, they operate their own legalization programs, through a process of compacting with the state of Minnesota. And so they are not subject to the state regulatory system. They operate independently.
Oh wow. Okay. Now, and in that regard, I mean, that means there's got to be some crazy kind of mixed success stories going on right now in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time here in Minnesota. I think, a lot of the eyes of the nation are on us because what we're doing really is kind of experimental. We are the first state to have legalized hemp-derived before we legalized adult use. We're the first state to try to create this dual path industry where we have the hemp and we have the adult use. And we're really the first market that has capped the scale of cannabis operation as small as we have, in this attempt to have this more small business oriented market. And so, it has introduced uncertainty and longer timeline, but at the same time, it has opened up a lot of opportunity and excitement. And
I mean,
I
you
encourage
feel,
people to come here and experience our market for themselves.
I mean, do you feel like Minnesota's tackling the social justice issue and policies correctly, or where they sit in social justice?
I think that no state has gotten it right, and I don't think that Minnesota is, getting all of it right either. I think that The way our statute is set up, it really did center a focus on social equity, right down to this notion that, government social equity programs in cannabis and beyond cannabis uh, empirically fail. They get mired in lawsuits or, government inefficiency. And quite frankly, it's not sufficient money. And so this idea of creating this smaller scale industry here in Minnesota, um, much of the thought process behind it was, even if your social equity programs, follow that trend that we've seen nationwide of not being successful, at least you are setting up the floor, the playing field to be more fair to smaller businesses, which, you're going to have a lot more social equity applicants or businesses that are small businesses.
Well, you have something going on where there's like a community reinvestment program. How does that work? Talk
We
about
do have a community reinvestment program that invests a portion back into communities that were disproportionately impacted by prohibition, and then we also have a number of grant and forgivable loan programs that are designated for social equity businesses in cannabis.
You have some ongoing support and mentorship programs also. Is that right?
We have grant programs to support those kinds of programs. But again, this is where I think Minnesota, like all states, has a lot of room for improvement. And that is the pace of getting these programs up and running. They are often up and running way past the point that folks that need that kind of technical assistance and mentorship and capital are able to benefit from it. And unfortunately, in Minnesota, we're getting tripped up the same way a lot of other states have: litigation, and then government timeline.
And I mean, what do you think is on the horizon when it comes to possible changes at the federal level, and
I
how will
mean,
that impact Minnesota?
I think I think that rescheduling is a question of when, not if. And then I think, it introduces a lot of uncertainties, some good and some, I think the net is good. Once we
Really,
see
I mean, let's see what
rescheduling,
hold on. I'd like to just address that a little bit because I'm not sure if the net is going to be as good as people think it's going to be. Because once you open up the door of rescheduling, you open up the door of what entity actually oversees that rescheduling. If it's rescheduled and becomes a Schedule 3 drug, then it means it's on the pharmaceutical pharmacopoeia that allows the FDA to be the overseeing organization for cannabis, and this is an organization that has been intently, set upon getting rid of the cannabis pipeline, and now all of a sudden they're going to be in charge of it. And I mean, if we go to Schedule 3, now you have a pharmaceutical drug that literally is being sold in entities and places that have no control over pharmaceuticals, dispensaries.
I agree with you 100% on all of those contentions. I don't think that we are looking at any kind of federal solution anywhere in the foreseeable horizon that solves for the reality is that cannabis is going to have to continue to really happen at a state level. Um, we don't have a coherent framework for cannabis regulation at all at the federal level. And I think the hemp stuff, quite frankly, messed it up even more. And we don't have a coherent advocacy framework at the federal level, quite frankly, to steer the ship away from exactly the trajectory and the outcome that you're describing. And I think on the hemp-derived side, we're going to see the big alcohol manufacturers and wholesalers come in and clamp down and do exactly the same thing there. So I think at a federal level, and this is from the standpoint of a political operative, I'm kind of looking practically at the horizon. There really is nothing that gives me hope that we're going to be able to, in the near term, move past the need for having robust state-based cannabis markets exactly the way we do now. Where I say the net benefit may come from this is that at least now, at the state level, you're going to be able to have banking, you're going to be able to have insurance, you're going to be able to, things that make it so that already people who aren't millionaires have a hard time participating in this industry, right?
And from a reciprocity standpoint, I mean, the Fed could open up the door to allow states that have legal setups do cross state lines, but I don't think states are going to go for that.
This is why we've done what we've done in Minnesota and why we've structured the market the way it is. And when we look at the future, it seems to me that with the direction things are going in federally, there's sort of two scales and pathways to success. You either need to be so big that you are thinking globally in the way these pharmaceuticals and such do, or some of these large cannabis, multinationals that are becoming international, or you need to be thinking so small that you are thinking about a small craft business that is servicing your local community. That's the reality of where we are politically, and it's the reality of where we are when we look at how messed up the federal framework around this plant is, and how far we are from reaching a solution.
Sure. And, we were talking about the craft side of this, the small craft businesses. I just don't understand. Honestly, I see, something happening at the federal level that will literally be like throwing a grenade inside of every dispensary, because, at any point in time, if the Fed decided that it wanted to exercise its rights under its own patent, it could come in and shut down dispensaries if it chose to. I'm just saying, if they chose to. If they wanted to do this, if they wanted to come in, and that's the way the federal government has always seems to play in areas like this. They come in. It's like, when you saw prohibition lift for alcohol, well, they squashed a lot of the craft industries across the country for 40, 50 years before they started allowing them to come back. I could see the same thing happening in cannabis. They could basically come in and squash the craft producers and, utilizing just ridiculous draconian kinds of laws that were already in place to attack manufacturing. You could literally have a nightmare on your hands.
Yeah, I don't think that we are at a juncture where we are looking at like the future of cannabis policy, presenting, fewer uncertainties and concerns about these kinds of things. This remains an inherently political industry, and that's the world I live in, is at that intersection of the politics and the industry. And there's a lot of exciting things happening, but it is still probably more so than ever.
And if the Fed did step in and pass some sort of regulation, now all of a sudden you're talking about looking at communities trying to figure out what to do when it comes to expungement processes and of low-level cannabis convictions and those kinds of things. I just see like a nightmare on our doorstep rather than.
Well, rescheduling doesn't legalize anything. Rescheduling just, moves it lower down on the scheduled substance list still. So it's not legalization, it is a step towards decriminalization. And so again, we are still a long ways from where we need to be federally.
Yeah, I guess if the Fed comes in and says, okay, we're going to take this from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, it does legalize it to be a pharmaceutical. It does make it a drug that thing could literally be prescribed which is our problem right now because it's only recommended through almost every medical program in every state across the country. It's a medical recommendation rather than a prescription. So therefore, more doctors would get to participate in prescribing a drug that would then could be legally dispensed from a pharmacy rather than a dispensary.
Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of trade-offs here that we're gonna have to deal with, and we'll see.
Right, right. Well, how will the state ensure any kind of transparency when it comes to accountability and allocation of cannabis tax revenues? That's going to be a strange one, also, right?
At the state level?
Yes.
Yeah, so in Minnesota, we made the decision that we weren't looking for cannabis to be a cash cow for things like paying for schools and roads and things like that. So we set intentionally one of the lowest tax rates in the nation. Um, and the idea is to have a tax base that makes the program itself sustainable. But yeah, it is not earmarked for particular things. It is
So, what is your state tax rate on recreational, or what do you call it, adult use cannabis?
10%.
10%, which is really, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a real priority of our legislative champions, I think rightfully so, to set that tax rate low so that, the industry can thrive.
Wow.
Mhm.
And what's Minnesota's plan on collaborating with local, municipalities? Does everyone participate, or do they have some holdouts that don't participate? I mean, how does it work? Because I mean, in some states, Illinois, you could have, a community, and then 2 blocks over, another little area, a fiefdom that says no cannabis.
Yep. So our state law precludes local governments from being able to prohibit cannabis businesses from operating. So they have to allow cannabis businesses. They can choose, if they wish, a local government could choose to only license one retail location per 12,500 people, but that's um, the least they would have to license. They can license as many more than they want to. And so, yeah, there was really mindfulness for not having these sort of desert areas where people don't have access to regulated.
Or where they can be arrested for having access.
But we still see, I mean, the local government stuff is a major challenge for our businesses because the local governments do get to use, sort of their normal zoning authorities and things like that. And there is still stigma in certain areas of the state. But again, I think the small business oriented marketplace that we've created here has really facilitated uh, better exchange between local governments and cannabis businesses, since it oftentimes is a local business, it's employing local people, it's owned by a member of the community.
Tell me how it works right now. I mean, if somebody were to fly into Minnesota and they wanted to participate in the adult use market, how can they do that? What do they do? Are
Yep.
there are dispensaries open right now that people can go and have access to?
There are no adult use dispensaries that are open now in Minnesota other than those that exist on the tribal reservations.
Okay.
But what we do have right now open in Minnesota are all of these retail locations, a lot of which will convert over to dispensaries in the future. But you can buy these lower potency hemp-derived THC products. You can get those in liquor stores. You can get them in hemp specialty shops that are sort of like hemp dispensaries. You can get them in restaurants. Really,
And then wait, that term hemp dispensary, is that a legal term, or that's just a facility that opened up to sell hemp products?
yeah, those are facilities that opened up to sell these hemp products because there really is a lot of consumer demand for them here in Minnesota. A lot of them are folks that intend to transition to be adult use dispensaries.
Do they have to have a special license to open those doors?
Yes, they have to apply to have an adult use license, the same as anybody else that needs to apply to have an adult use license.
But let's say right now you fly into to Minnesota, you can go into. I'm sure that I don't know this, but I guess that from a tribal standpoint, the tribals properties have opened up as many as they could. I'm sure, right?
I don't know that they've opened as many as they could, but they have started opening them. Yes.
And so you can roll in there, buy a product, have it in your pocket. Police can't pull you over and pull something out of your pocket and say you're arrested.
Correct. As long as you're in compliance with the personal possession limits, which we will continue to lobby to raise, but you can have up to, I believe, 2 ounces in your possession, and I believe it's 2 pounds at home.
Can you
We do have
grow
home
it?
grow. Yes, we are the 11th state to legalize home grow. In Minnesota, you can grow up to 8 plants, 4 of which can be flowering.
And as long as you're using it on your private property, you're okay? Or
You can even gift it. You can gift up to that allowable possession limit, your home grow, to others as well.
So, I mean, now that's interesting because now in DC, it's weird. DC, has a law adult use where you can't really sell cannabis, right? You can sell everything associated with cannabis. So you can sell pipes and papers and anything else you want, and then you just give the cannabis away, right? Is that the same kind of an attitude?
No, it is. It's not. We have a really robust community of enthusiastic home growers here in Minnesota. There's an entire cottage industry that has sprung up around home growing, entire businesses that service home growers.
So you can, in a sense, have the same kind of, what do you call it, like a club, where instead of me growing for myself, I can ask you to grow for me.
Yeah, we have a caregiver provision. So for folks that are in the medical program, there can be some home grow for them. But no, I mean, people just do swaps, like they do community events, home grower get together, and then they, swap and exchange and share information. So no, I mean, it's.
And can they consume at those kind of events?
I'm sorry?
Is there consumption at those kind of events?
It depends on which municipality you're in and whether they allow for open consumption, but oftentimes, yes.
Wow. And if people wanted to get more information, where would they go? Give me some stats or digits so I can get a hold of you or get a hold of somebody who can explain it.
Yeah, so if people are interested in learning more about cannabis in Minnesota, you can find a lot of that information on our website, bluntstrategies.com. We have a weekly newsletter called the Pre-Roll that provides you with kind of all the latest developments you need to know about what's happening here in policy, politics, and industry. And you can find a link to that on our website or via Substack. It's called the Pre-Roll. And yeah, I think our Office of Cannabis Management has some newsletters that they send out on a regular basis for folks that are interested. But I really think people that are interested in knowing more about this industry, the best thing to do is come and visit. And if you do, reach out to us, and we're happy to take you around.
It's very interesting because I've been dealing in this business now for almost 24 years, and I've noted that one of the weakest parts of what we do is educating the consumer, educating the masses. Do you have a robust education program going on in Minnesota?
I think that is really baked into the ethos of the industry here in Minnesota, is that consumer education focus. And I would say that our industry has much more of a health and wellness focus than I think in a lot of other states. I think it's reflected in the types of businesses that we have here in Minnesota, where there really is that prioritization of consumer education. I think you'll find that reflected in our product market and in the dispensary culture when, it opens up here in Minnesota. That is not going to be you go in, they're trying to sell you whatever the highest potency strain is. There is this real strong emphasis on finding you, the right product for what it is that you're looking for. And if you go into any of our hemp dispensaries now, you see a lot of that education about the minor cannabinoids and, how these products can fit functionally into one's life.
Gotcha. I mean, we just talked a little bit about what may happen if the Fed steps in and does something. First off, you had a crystal ball. Would you think that's going to happen in the next year, next 2 years? What?
I think that it's likely that we will see rescheduling in the next 18 months, 2 years. I think that we are a long way from putting in place a regulatory system, though, to begin actually regulating products. I think FDA is a big clunky thing, and I don't know, it's going to be an interesting political climate. Who knows these days,
Right. Well, I can't say thank you enough, Leili, for being a part of the show today and giving us a little glimpse into what's going on in Minnesota.
My pleasure for having me.
Anything else you want to add?
No, just that we welcome people to come visit us here in Minnesota.
Excellent. And again, I'm sorry, I do have a question.
Yeah.
If in fact your adult use law has passed, like lots of hotels in different states that have adult use prohibit any smoking in hotels or anywhere within 20 feet of their front door. Is that the same thing that's kind of happening in Minnesota?
So our state law says anywhere that, it's governed under the Indoor Clean Air Act, the same as anything else. So basically anywhere that you wouldn't be able to smoke cigarettes or vape, you wouldn't be able to consume smokable or vapable cannabis products. And then municipalities, some have decided to impose further regulations with respect to, say, parks or within perimeters of government buildings.
Okay. And you do have vapable, smokable, or you just have smokable now?
Right now, we don't have adult use, but the products are
the hemp-based product.
Criminalized. So, I mean, people can be consuming smokable and vapable products legally. It just can't be sold to them by someone in Minnesota.
Really? So again, it's that giveaway thing.
It could be that it's a giveaway. It could be that you're a medical patient. The law is agnostic as to why it is that you have the product. The possession of it is, and consumption of it is no longer illegal.
It's crazy how these states pass that laws, and then they literally kind of act like, well, I don't know how you got it, but it's okay, right?
Well, I mean, the idea always was, and our campaign came from this place, and I think the legislators came from this place of the most important thing to do here is to undo the prohibition as much as possible and get rid of the criminal penalties. Because the other thing Minnesota did immediately upon enactment of this law was automatically expunge the records of anybody with a cannabis conviction, nonviolent cannabis conviction. So all the lower level ones automatically expunged, and then any more complicated ones automatically go before an expungement board for reconsideration.
Oh, that's already happened in the state?
That's already happened in the state.
And how is that working out for those people who've had their records expunged?
It was very efficient, and I think it is an enormous burden that is lifted for a lot of people who otherwise, continue to face difficulties with getting loans and housing, and it factors into custody, all of these things. It's hiring.
If you were a person, would you say that Minnesota is a very friendly state for people who want to try to get into the industry, or is this a state the buyer beware? Be careful if you move out to Minnesota because I think I want to jump out into the green rush.
No, I think that Minnesota is a really exciting place for people that are interested in entering this industry. I think we have one of the most creative marketplaces. I think we have one of the most collaborative marketplaces. But with anybody that wants to get into this industry, I always start from a place of there is incredible uncertainty, and all of those protections that normal businesses have are not afforded to you when you have a cannabis business. And so, this is not a business you rush into because you want to get rich quick. It will bankrupt you if that is your attitude. And so, it is for those that have the passion and the ability to deal with that kind of a dynamic situation.
Well, again, I can't say thank you so much. Incredibly enlightening. I think you just made some people think, I should fly through Minnesota. No, it sounds like Minnesota is really trying its best to do things differently and learning from other states and building on a cannabis market that's both equitable and effective. So thank you so much for being here and sharing that with us. Before we wrap up, do you have any other final thoughts?
No, I really appreciate the invitation.
Oh, ma'am, that's so. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to ask everybody who's been tuning in to, go ahead and look down below, hit that little subscribe button if you want. And again, one more time, Leili, give them some stats of where they can go if they want to get information.
You can get more information on our website, bluntstrategies.com.
Bluntstrategies.com. It's got to be good if it's doing things in a blunt way. Thank you all for tuning in for this episode of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. And make sure you keep tuning in the future. Again, Leili, you be well. Have a wonderful holiday with your family. Much love. And let's see if you ever want to come back. You have a home here, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments. Military Makeover is so grateful for the support of Purple Heart Homes, a nonprofit organization that rebuilds and transforms the homes for our veterans.
Our heroes come home with sacrifices most of us can't imagine. As a veteran myself, I've been there and founded Purple Heart Homes to help.
When I tell the story of Purple Heart Homes, it's the freedom to not have to depend on somebody else to do the simple everyday things in life.
Visit phhusa.org/makeover to learn how you can help.